Good evening, folks, and welcome to a special edition of the Bill Crane Report. Joined again tonight by my partner, Duane Weiss.
Hi there.
And we have a special guest tonight, a fellow that works for a local police department and moonlights with the D.E.A. We're just going to call him Fred, but he's been around for a good many years, and we're going to talk about the drug problem. And I guess I will kind of lead into it. I don't think that we really have any idea, Fred, what the problem is locally. We know what the problem is in Boston, and up in Lynn.
We only know what we see in the paper.
And down in Providence, but that's all we know, you know. In these towns around here, Metro West, if you will, is it the same thing? Is it?
Yes, it is.
It is.
It is, and it's gotten to a point where it's pretty much out of control. And the problem, from my point of view, it's become so mobile that the drugs are everywhere. I had one young man overdosed, and I went and interviewing him when he got overdosed. He had just gotten out of jail. He had done a year in jail, and one of the things he said to me was, he said, you know, before I went to jail, you know, for my heroin addiction, he says, I'd have to get up, I didn't have a license, I'd have to get a ride, I'd have to go to Rhode Island, I'd have to go to Boston. He goes, my God, he goes, they deliver it to my front door now. He goes, I don't get out of my pajamas, I go to the front door, and there it is. And he looked at me and said, I'm going to end up dead, because how am I going to say no? He said, before it was a struggle to get it, now they're bringing it to me. This past year, that kid died.
That took care of my question.
Yeah.
How old was he?
31 when he passed away.
31. And
Yeah.
he had been on the junk for how long?
Probably, I'd say, 11 years.
11 years. Wow.
And that was, you know, and he was absolutely right. They deliver it right to your front door. You
Right.
don't have to go anywhere.
Is the
You can,
price,
you can take a walk down the street, and you can just get it. You can get it.
Has the price dropped?
No, the
Street
price of heroin is cheap.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that's one of the other problems.
Yeah.
Most of the people, the heroin problem that's out of control now is from the pain prescription drugs that we have, specifically oxycodone. When that came out, it was a very powerful drug, and I remember I went to a D.E.A class. They had people from Purdue that produced the oxycodone drugs, and it was such a strong pain reliever that the government didn't want to give them permission to put it out there. And Purdue pushed it, saying, we're only going to be giving it to people that have terminal cancer or terminal AIDS. So if they get addicted, their life is over shortly anyways. We're only trying to give them comfort. And then they produced it. Now you've got it out there, and everyone, you guys have probably been prescribed it at one time or another. Now you go for having teeth pulled out, to back pain, to anything. And they
Is
give
oxycodone the same as oxycontin?
Yeah, it's the only difference between
One is-
oxycodone and oxycontin is oxycontin is time released. Oxycodone
Oh, okay,
has no
but
time release.
what's
I always refer to it as oxycodone, but it's the same.
What's the common name for that? Is oh boy, I can't remember, because I broke some ribs, and they gave me something like that.
I got a prescription for that once when I really had some back pain. I didn't take it.
But the doctors just prescribe it now.
Yeah, I mean, my doctor
so
gave me.
commonly.
Yeah.
And it came out there before, like they had up to 160 milligrams was available. Then it was 80 milligrams was available. Now it's mostly down between 10 and 30 milligrams is available. That's the most common. I mean, you can still get the stronger dosage that are out there. And what happened was is that kids got their hands on the oxycodone, and they would sniff it. You'd break it up with a razor blade, and you'd sniff it, and you were getting high. But the prices for the oxycodone pills is $1 a milligram. So if you got an 80 milligram pill, it was $80 for one small pill. And now the 30 milligram goes for probably $35 on the street. And what happened is kids have gotten addicted to the oxycodone and sniffing it, and now they can't get it. So what happens is somebody else will say to them, Jesus, go to the heroin. Heroin is a lot cheaper, and you get the exact same high.
Now, do they cook the heroin and inject it?
You can sniff it, you can inject it by cooking it, and you can also sniff it. And that was one of the other problems, is a lot of people say, oh, I hate needles, I don't use needles or anything like that, and then you don't have to use a needle, you can sniff it. When I was a young man, the only way to do the heroin was through a needle, so it always scared a lot of people away from it. It always had a bad aura about it, no one liked it, no one cared for it. But once they found out they could sniff it, well, people are sniffing the oxycodone, they're sniffing the cocaine. So it wasn't a big deal. So then that's what started it, was by starting to sniff it, and then you end up being hooked. It's the one drug that you'll end up, if you don't do it, you'll end up sick.
Now, the rash of overdoses that we see about, like the heroin, is that because of the strength and the purity of what's out there coming in?
A little bit of that, and a lot of what it's being mixed with. When you, at least when you buy an oxycodone pill, you know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly what it is. But when you're buying heroin, you don't know where it's getting from.
That's right.
A lot of people tell me, well, I get it from the same dealer all the time. And I always say to them, but you don't know where that dealer is getting from.
He might have pulled a box of rat poison off the shelf
exactly.
and cut it with
well,
that.
It's, you know, they don't want to lose their customers, but they also want to give them that high. And usually like fentanyl is in it now, and that's what's being cut with a lot, and that's leading to a lot of the overdoses.
Okay.
And believe it or not, the better the high, the more popular it becomes.
That makes sense.
I had one girl tell me, one time, it's like, oh yeah, I can't believe they put the brand name in the newspaper. I think it was a fireman overdosed, and they put the brand of the, like, say it was Superman, you know, labeled Superman heroin. And now she goes, everybody wants it. I said, why would you want a drug that just somebody died from? She said, because you know that's really, really good stuff. And I said, yeah, but you could die from it. Yeah, but he didn't know what he was doing. I know what I'm doing. And
Sad as it is,
that's
that makes
the
sense.
mindset, and that's the attitude.
So
here
with
I'm thinking, geez, you put that brand name on it. And she says, yeah, now a lot of the dealers, they're changing their brand name to Superman just because everybody wants it.
Because
it's in big demand, which was sort of kind of shocking. You wouldn't think it would be wanting to deal with that, but.
Wow. So that's the #1 problem out there right now is heroin?
Yes, it is.
How about crack? That was popular 20 years ago or 25
The heroin
years ago.
seems to have taken over it, but it still is very, very popular.
It is, because it's cheap, right?
It's cheap. It's cocaine, but a lot of people that you know, they can do the cocaine and they can move on. But usually, from what you do is you're smoking the crack. You want it again as soon as you get done. You want more. And a lot of times the drug dealers, they'll sell powder cocaine. They'll sell the crack cocaine, and they usually will always try to get you to go to crack because they know you'll be calling them right back.
Because it's
almost as
so
soon as you
addictive.
leave. Yeah, and it gets very controlling. The dealers will make, you know, after a certain hour, you're going to pay more money and you're going to have to drive. No, I'm not coming. Yeah, I came out and saw you at 4 o'clock, but now it's midnight. You want it. You got to come to Rhode Island. You got to come meet me down the street from my house.
Central Falls.
And that's it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
How does powder cocaine become crack cocaine? I never understood that.
You have to cook it.
Cook it?
Yep.
Okay.
You can cook it, but now you can buy it that way. It's already pre-cooked for you.
What's the difference in the characteristics once it's cooked?
It just becomes more. It becomes a more solid base, and you can smoke it, and you can inhale it.
All right.
How about meth?
Yep, there is a lot of crystal meth around. Not as bad in the Massachusetts area, but I mean it is out there and it is coming.
You know, that they go crazy with that.
Yep, they do. They do. The heroin is more like a sleeping drug. You nod off. A lot of heroin users, you'll see their cars are always dinged and banged up and stuff. They're nodding off all the time. They're always like, you know, you'll be sitting there talking with them and they'll be nodding off while they're talking to you.
Now, Fred, obviously I've got some friends that are acquaintances that are potheads. And they'll look me right square in the eye and they'll say, you know what? No big deal. I'm not doing myself or anybody else any harm. I light up a joint every night at 7:30 or some given time. 7:30, and then I finish it at 9:30. Smoke half of it, then I finish it at 9:30. In control. I wouldn't drive, but otherwise, it's totally normal. And I've never had any problems. And I've been doing this for 30 years. Is that possible?
Yeah,
Or-
it is.
It is?
It's that older generation mentality too. Where you grew up, you didn't do it during the daytime. It was like he's doing it at night before he goes to bed. Like,
Oh, before he watches the ball game.
yep, yeah. Well, there you go. That'll make the ball game last
Where
even,
the Sox are
even
playing
longer.
now. It may not be a bad idea, right?
When I used to talk at high schools and stuff, I used to always, the kids would talk about legalizing the marijuana, and I used to say to them, I'd have no problem if you legalized it. I've never been to a house party where kids are out of control because they're stoned. They're usually very mellow, very cooperative, and good. But now that it's gotten to the stage that it's at, I think we're sending the wrong message out there to our generation. I think things are out of control. I think it needs to be reeled in. And like you said, your gentleman said he wouldn't drive. The kids drive nowadays. They drive and they're smoking the marijuana while they're driving. And they don't realize you're operating under the influence. It's not alcohol, but it's under the influence of marijuana.
Now, whatever it is that they can test for stays in your system for 4 or 5 days after you smoke it?
I believe it does. I forget each drug stays in your system longer. I
yeah.
really don't know. But people who have to be drug tested, they know exactly how long it
yeah.
stays in.
Yeah.
I read someplace that the hair follicle test on one of them can go up
Yeah,
to
now
30
that,
days.
That one sticks
Yeah,
around for a
that's
while.
supposed to be
Yep.
the best one to do. And a lot of people that are on probation, they have to be drug tested, but they've all got ways of, you just get more creative. They get ways of getting around it. I know I've been to a lot of like drug houses, and you'll see they've got urine in the refrigerator.
That's what I was going to say.
That's, it's a clean urine,
Label,
and they'll
yep.
bring it in. I had one girl, she used to put a balloon inside her vagina, and when she'd go to pee, she'd pinch the end of the balloon, and the pee would come out. It'd be body temperature, it'd be warm, and she passed all her tests. They're always thinking of ways to beat the system, and there's always going to be a way to get around it.
How old are they when they start now, Fred?
They're starting as young as 12 years old.
Oh. And would they start with?
Usually you're starting with the marijuana.
Yeah.
And it's a different generation of kids. Like probably you and I, when we grew up, it was having your first beer.
Yeah.
And I know when I grew up, it was the beeries and the heads. Anybody smoking marijuana, you weren't one of the groups. You weren't a football player. You weren't a guy. So it was always more towards the alcohol. But the kids nowadays, they can get their hands on anything.
Wow.
Like a lot of times, I get drug questions. I'll ask the young kids. I'm treated like I'm some sort of drug expert, but I'm like a bartender that doesn't drink. I can mix you any drink. I can tell you all about it, but I don't drink. So it's to say I don't do drugs. So I'm only educated by the people that I can learn from.
Sure.
So I'm not truly, I don't consider myself a true expert because I don't do it. So I don't know. But I learn from people by talking to them.
I did a lot of volunteer work with the homeless in Boston when I first retired. And it was funny because there was 3 of us. And one guy would give out sandwiches and coffee. Another one would collect used clothing and have it washed and cleaned. He'd give out clothing. My job was to talk to the people. And I said, that's it? And they said, well, Bill, you may be the only sane voice that some of these people talked to today. I'm saying to myself, they're on shaky ground now. But, the stories were the same over and over and over. How old were you when you started? 14. What did you start with? Budweiser or marijuana? What happened then? Well, I graduated up to harder stuff. I said, but marijuana's not supposed to be a gateway drug. Well, it is. Believe me, it is. You're doing it and you want something better. And I heard that story over and over and over. And a lot of those people were abused as children, too.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a personality. It's a very addictive personality to start with, or they wouldn't be in that situation.
Tell us about the dealers, the pushers.
It's a tremendous money business. It's huge. And a lot of these people, I think maybe because of my age and I've been doing this so long, I look at them and I'm thinking, Well, they're not going to go to work at a McDonald's and make $10 an hour when they
no.
can make this amount of money with the drugs. And it's an unbelievably profit. It's huge for them.
Now, when they're apprehended by the police, do they just skate or do they actually do some time?
It all depends, but majority of the time, they're going to skate, especially if it's your first offense. Yeah, nothing is really going to happen to them. And you know, and it's pretty common. If you end up doing jail time, you've got a bad record. You're a bad guy.
And you've been arrested for other stuff, and
this
is your second or third.
Usually quite a few times.
Yeah.
But it's become a huge enterprise. The people that I deal with, they set themselves up. They have dispatchers and they have runners. You call in and you talk with somebody on the phone, and they send out somebody to meet you. You don't have any communication with the person that's actually delivering the drugs. You only talk to the dispatcher. The dispatcher talks to the runner. The runners work their jobs like they have day shifts and they have night shifts.
Yep.
And sometimes some of these guys that are runners, they work other jobs during the day. A lot of these drug dealers, they don't do that drug themselves. And it's just in there for the money and the money that can be made. So a lot of times, we had they call it like a stash house, an apartment, and the runners would show up in an apartment, they'd go in, they'd collect all their drugs to be delivered that day, they'd go back out, and it was a job for them. Yeah. And they would go out and they would do it. And the runners knew if you get arrested by the police, you just keep your mouth shut, you just go in, you wait, we'll get you bailed out, and you'll come back out. And they'll just replace that runner with another runner. If you get arrested down here in the Boston area, a lot of times they end up going back up to Lowell, they ship them up there. They can come out with, we've got one dealer, a week later they got him with a different name, different driver's license, different identification, everything else, and right back out at it. And they'll just relocate.
There's I don't sleep a lot, so I'm a late night TV watcher. There's this series called Drugs, Inc. That's very good. They take different areas, different drugs. It's an hour program. National Geographic, I think, puts it on. And they'll have a dealer. He'll have his hoodie on and disguise his voice, and he's telling you exactly what he's doing, and how much money he can make, and how many people he's got in the street for him, and how they have to perform, and where he gets in this great big kilo maybe, and he starts cutting it all up and starts going through. It's got different layers of distribution.
Yes.
And so I guess that's for protection, which one can't go to the next one.
It is, like if you get a runner, then you didn't get to the dealer. So that's their way of insulating themselves. And a lot of times they'll change the runners up. They change the phone numbers up. It's a competitive business too.
Oh,
you'll get, other dealers will call up customers and say, hey, don't tell Joe that I'm making deliveries, but I'll meet you. I'll get up earlier than he does. I'll be available during the day hours. You won't have to wait for him to come out. I could be available. I can give you a better price. And a lot of times, it's business gets a little slow. They actually sent out group texts. Hey, got a special for today, 3 for $100. It's amazing.
I saw that too. Also watch the damned excuses some of these guys get when they get caught. I watch the Cops, that series. They'll catch some guy and they find a bag of crack in his pocket. Is this yours? No, it's not mine. What's in your pants? Them aren't my pants. Whose pants are you wearing then?
It still goes to this day.
Huh?
Yeah, it still goes to this day.
You've heard all of that, right?
Oh, yeah. As recently as 2 weeks ago, took 2 oxycodone pills off of a girl. And she goes, oh, no, I got them from Joe, and he said they were aspirin. There must be a mistake. Those aren't oxycodone.
Always buy aspirin from
he
guys
gave you
named
$60
Joe.
worth of pills by mistake. That's not going to happen.
He had a pickup truck. They had found a whole bunch of stuff in the bed. He says, somebody just walked by and he just threw it in my bed. And he threw $300 worth of drugs in your. They just tossed it in. I don't know.
Happens all the time to me.
Yeah, me too.
We see a lot in the paper now, addicts are victims. And they're not criminals, they're victims.
Everybody's a victim today.
And how do we deal with this mentality?
Well, I do believe in one way they are victims.
Yeah.
A lot of them have some sort of different issues, whether it's being bipolar or anxiety-driven or depression. Like I think any one of them that you find that does use, and you did talk to them, they do have anxiety issues, they do have depression, and they do suffer from that, and they're self-medicating themselves. So in that sense, they are victims because they are self-medicating themselves. They're not bad people.
They have this addictive personality too.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
You know, you can talk to some people that can go out. They call them weekend people. They'll go out. They'll go to a party. They'll do a line of cocaine. That's it. They won't touch it again until another week. I had one young girl say that, you know, first time she did cocaine, she was 14 years old, and had all the girlfriends over. They had a sleepover down the basement. She said there was about 8 of them. One of the girls had cocaine. She tried it and was like, oh my God, this stuff is just fantastic. You know, the next morning she said to the girl, can we get more? She said, what are you talking about? She said, you know, next time we do a sleepover, I'll get some. She goes, no, I want it now. I need it now. And it's just, it's like you said, it's that addictive personality.
Grabs right on.
You know, I used to, when my younger days, I'd go out with my wife. She'd have a cigarette at a party. She'd never have another cigarette.
Yep.
And another party, she'd have one cigarette. Me, I had a cigarette. I was up to smoking 2 packs a day.
Yeah, I used to be smoking 30, 35 years ago, maybe 40 now.
And I have that addictive personality.
and I
you know,
had
and
to
I know I
smoke.
do. I know with food. I have
Yep.
to watch myself with alcohol. I have that inside of me.
I
And
had a
that's like-
salesman. One of my salesmen. We'd go out on weekends or we'd do something. He'd buy a pack of cigarettes and never touch them again.
I wish I could have
I
done
said,
that.
Dick, how can you do that? He said, I
Yeah.
don't know. I just
And you can't. It's amazing.
Now this stuff, like for instance, heroin, where does that come from, Fred? Is that Mexico or is that Afghanistan?
Well,
or-
it came up like Afghanistan, Peru. It comes there and it usually goes through Mexico and then it comes into our country. And our biggest problem is American has a ferocious appetite for drugs.
Yep.
Like
Always
the
that
rest of the
profit
world
motive.
looks at us and say, hey, you're the problem.
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
guys didn't want it, you know, what are you getting mad at us for? You're the one that it's in demand, and we do. It's in huge demand.
Adults too. I mean, businessmen and businesswomen, and
Yes, all kinds of people. People with nice homes living right in any town, any local town. And if I do refer to Norfolk, it doesn't mean it's
No,
a
no, I
Norfolk
understand
problem.
that.
It's, I remember one time I talked at Walpole High School, and afterwards I had people go, I would have never put my kid in Walpole High. I said, no, I wasn't meaning Walpole High School. I was referring to all high schools. So in towns, it's everywhere. I know some very successful people. And sometimes when you get your hands on money, it leads you right downhill. If you have that addictive personality, and it can just, I know people that have lost their businesses. In the ages, it doesn't matter about your sex, your age, your color. It can become, if you got that addictive personality, it can end up owning you, and you can end up losing everything you have. It becomes, that's the #1 need for you that day, over food, over your kids, over anything. It used to always be like mothers always had that mother beer would always come out. Well, it doesn't come out anymore. You know, your kids will go right to the side. You know, the drug becomes #1.
wow. I've got down here listed. You know, is it peer pressure? Is it boredom? I guess it must be. It's all of this stuff.
Yeah, I
isn't
think
it?
it's that. You know, it's also the availability. Like
Yeah.
I know, like I talk with kids in school, they could get anything that you named.
Now-
They could get their hands on it.
Supposing you went to pick a name, any name, Medway High School, and you spoke to them. Do they really pay attention and focus on you, or do they just blow you off mentally, or do they just do
No, they'll
during your
listen.
talk?
If you're interested, they'll listen to you. Like if you tell them stories, talk about people and things that relate to them, they will. I think they'd do better with somebody coming in their age that's done it and talk to them about it. That would make more than you know. They're looking at me going, "Oh, the guy's never done it before," or anything else. He doesn't really know what it's like. And you know, the drugs are great. They make you feel great. I remembered when I was younger, I had somebody, one of my buddies said, you know what, try the Coke. It makes you feel so good. It just brings out everything. You feel like you can do everything. And I said to him, what if I try it and I like it? I said, my goal is to become a cop. I said, what if I tried that stuff and I like it? I said, I'll never be able to become a cop. I'll lose my future, my life. And I mean, that's one reason why I've never done anything is because I am a cop. I volunteer to get drug tested, just so you have that bond of trust, because a lot of times in work drug dealers will always say, oh no, I gave him drugs, I watched him do it, he's a drug addict. And one of the best going back in the years, Derek Sanderson. When drugs were around and everybody was having them, I went to a seminar and it was great. They had all kinds of people there, all sports celebrities, and they all talked. And Red Auerbach said, you got a bad apple in there. You get rid of it; it'll poison the whole barrel. And got around to Derek Sanderson, and he said, "Don't try it because you're gonna like it." He said, "The stuff is absolutely great." He said, "It's like going out to dinner. You don't get a bad meal." He goes, "You try drugs, you're gonna love it." He goes, and that's the problem.
Then how do we combat this, Fred? How the devil do we? What can we say to the kids? Or how can we stop the dealers? Or is it just a done deal? We can't do it.
I don't know. It's like a train going through town. I'm just trying to slow it down. I have no idea how to stop it. I mean, every time you stop something, something else will take its place. Yeah. I'll have an apartment building with the drug activity in there. I've got the dealer coming there. We lock the dealer up. I'll call the person who helped out in the apartment building. They call me back that night, says there's another dealer out here. There's just someone else takes their place, and it's going to happen. A lot of times I'll have people, they'll say, oh, can you help me? Can you lock up my drug dealer? And it's like you do it, but it's like a bar. You don't get served at that bar. You just walk down the street, there's going to be another bar. You have to control it yourself. It's just you're always going to be able to find a drink. It's out there.
Get shut off in one place, you can find another.
And that's the same with the drugs. As soon as you take away that drug dealer for that, he has absolutely no problem finding a new drug dealer.
What about designer drugs today?
Yeah, they're out there.
They're not semi-legal and quasi-legal and illegal, and then
they're real legal. It's just what they do is they just change the component that's in the drug, so it's not illegal. And then it's just a matter of time when it becomes a problem. Then they make whatever the element is that's in the drug does become illegal.
Is that a problem locally?
It's not. The heroin is the problem. Okay. So the designer drugs, it's funny. It just made me think about it. I mean, it hasn't become an issue as of late. It's all the heroin right now.
When there was and I want to say it was up in Lynn, but it doesn't matter. It happened. That this fellow and his girlfriend, I think she was 28. He was roughly the same age. And the other guy, they came in, and somebody looked into the apartment, and there they were, him and her both dead, and he had a needle stuck in his arm.
Yeah, that wasn't too long ago.
No. When that happens,
yes.
When that happens, does it affect the younger people at all? Or do they just say, they were stupid?
I think they were stupid. That just won't happen to me.
Because I'm smarter than they
are.
Yeah.
In the heroin, you become so addictive. It's like one person told me, it's like you get up in the morning and you don't have it and you've got the flu and you're sick. You can't function. You couldn't work if you were working. You can't do anything. But once you get that heroin, that's why they call it dope sick. Once you get that heroin, you're back up and you're feeling okay. And it's, you need to do more to get the high. But the first bit of the heroin is just so you don't feel sick.
All right, supposing now I was a user, all right, and I woke up one morning dope sick and I just said, it ain't worth it. How many days have to go by before I finally start feeling better?
It's going to probably be 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it's just, it's pretty.
All you need then is one of your buddies to come to the house.
Yeah, and it's one of the other, somebody else told me it's funny, when you want something, everybody's charging you money, nobody gives you anything for free, but when you're not doing the stuff, everybody will offer you something. It's always, God, you would have never given that to me when I'm clean, but when you get clean, they're always offering it to you. Hey, one kid got himself clean. He says, I'm going to, hey, finally went out, I went to the bar and I grabbed I had a beer and I watched the Bruins game and it was a pretty good night. I went back, Next Bruins game, I had a couple more beers. I did good. Next thing you know, he says, I'm back, and everybody keeps offering me something. They're offering me, and now he said, I'm right back to it. Yeah. The few people that I've known that have made it, they've left. They've gone from the area. They've relocated themselves.
Because there's too much temptation. There's the
yeah,
good,
it's just
all
like
the, good
the
old
example
guy
that I
network.
used. You go to the bar and you go out, and you just it's constantly there. And you constantly see them, and people are always in contact with you. You got to get rid of that cell phone. They're always going to be calling you. The deal is they don't hear from you. They'll give you a call. Say, hey, what's up? I haven't seen you.
Yeah.
Or they'll come by your door. They'll come by and knock on your door.
Got a little care package for you. Here's a
yeah,
couple of
if people
baggies.
don't have money, they'll give up their jewelry. They'll give up, girls will exchange sex. There's a lot of times during our surveillance, you know, I've seen, you know, the dealer goes out and he ends up having sexual activity with the girl. Comes out of the apartment building, there's no money exchanged, there's sex exchanged. You know, we're following one dealer around. He stops, he gets out into the eastern area, he goes and he gets Chinese food to go. He's in his car, he's eating Chinese food. Pretty blonde girl comes out of the apartment and services them. I says, the guys on the radio says, I've been out here for 8 hours. I'm starving and I haven't had a girl. And it's like, this guy's got it made.
Nobody's bringing me Chinese food.
One of the guys goes, yeah, but an hour from now he'll be hungry again.
Ain't it the truth?
It is. It is.
When this happens, do you guys ever try any of that scared straight stuff with the kids? You bring them into Norfolk County House of Correction or something like that?
I've never done that, and I don't know if they still have it going. But I believe it could work a little bit. And you know what? If it worked for one kid, it would be worth doing it.
It would be worth it, yeah.
I remember when I first started taking a law enforcement class, I went to Bridgewater, the Bridgewater jail, and did a tour in there and everything. And I said, Mother of God, I said, you'll never get me in here. If I ever know that I'm going to jail, I will be gone. I will hit the road. I will be out of here.
Yep.
I could not imagine. And if you've been in, I've been to a lot of jails to interview people and to talk to people and stuff, and I couldn't imagine being incarcerated. I mean, that would be enough to scare me.
I've been in Norfolk prison down here with the fire department when they were burning the mattresses up in the ceilings and all of that. And I got to tell you something. It's an uncomfortable feeling being in there.
It is. So imagine living in there.
Yeah. And you talk to these guys too, you know, or actually talk to the guards. And they say, well, the white guys are over there with their gang. The Spanish guys are over there with their gang. The blacks are over there with their gang.
And if you're not in the gang, you're alone.
And
you're
if you're a loner, you might just well lie down and die.
You're going to have to join somebody's gang just to survive.
Just to get protection. What kind of a country are we that does that?
We are a country with a ferocious appetite.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could see these other countries looking at us, you know, with our out of control drug appetite, you know, our violence, just our way of life.
Yeah. Is there, yeah, I guess I've asked this before, but is there any light at the end of the tunnel here?
Boy, that's tough.
That's what keeps you going, I know.
It is, but it's very hard, and you know, and the drugs they're always changing. They're always. When I became a policeman, marijuana was the cheapest drug out there. Right now, marijuana is the most expensive drug to buy.
Really?
Yeah. Most people don't believe that, but it is.
How much is it for an ounce?
For an ounce, it's probably, you know, $240.
Really?
Yep, $250. I mean, you'd think it was $20 for an ounce.
My friend, the pothead.
Yeah.
He gets it for $150 an ounce.
Oh, that's good, but it might not be that good of stuff.
Well, who knows? It keeps him under control anyway.
But I mean, it's the most expensive drug out there.
Why,
so the
why
drugs,
is that?
Pardon?
Why is the price of marijuana?
I don't know. You know, it's more available than it's ever been. I mean, back when I was younger, you know, it was very hard to, you know, it wasn't available as much. Now it's all homegrown. It's everywhere.
Yep.
I mean, we've become great at cultivating our own marijuana.
Yeah.
It's.
I know when I was a kid, 1954, we had a family come out to Norfolk. They had been living in, well, I want to say Mattapan. I'm not positive. In there, JP, one of those places. Nice people, nice family. And the boy was 18 and 19 years old. And he introduced all the lads in town to marijuana. Nobody really, we were in awe that this guy could snap his fingers and get it just like that.
I never saw it till I went in the Army.
Yeah.
I
I've
grew up in the
never-
Midwest. And to us, somebody would talk about marijuana, that was something in New York City. We never saw anything like that.
Yeah. And then it's the same now. Before you'd have to go somewhere to get it, or you knew one person who could go get it for you. Now it's delivered right to you. You
I
don't
know
have
even
to go anywhere.
Even when I watched my brother die of melanoma, a terrible, painful death, and he was in Houston, Texas, in the hospital. And the doctor said, he said, to the nurses, he said, if you guys could come up with some marijuana, you could be a godsend for this kid. So one of the nurses said to my mother, she says, give me 20 bucks. My mother gave it to her, and next day she comes back, and they actually were so afraid of it, they took wet towels and tuck them around the bottom of the door so the smell wouldn't get out of the room. And
Oh, that's one thing.
posted a guard there,
It's the smell. It's
Yeah.
pretty.
But
pretty
it
strong.
did. His last week or so of life, he didn't suffer. Wasn't, just total agony. It did relieve the pain and the suffering for him.
And it's funny, just prior to coming here tonight, I grabbed two people that I knew that were marijuana smokers and asked them about the legalization. And that was one of the questions that you asked me, do you think it's sending the wrong message? And I was surprised, not surprised at one of them answering it, but both of them. They both said it is sending the wrong message. But I believe medically that I think it is good for you medically. For people that really legitimately need it.
Yeah.
But this one person told me, he said, I've got a friend who moved out to California to go to school, bought a medical marijuana card for $400. He said that person was able to bring it home on a plane flight with the card.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, and there's nothing wrong. He said this person right now is over in Europe, still going to school. Very, very bright, very smart person. But it was just available and you could just do it. But there are people for medical reasons, absolutely, like your brother. And both of these people said the same thing. For medically, I think it absolutely would be good. But as far as sending the wrong message, it clearly is.
You guys must be busy as heck.
Yes.
Trying to stem the tide. Do you ever make big hits where you really knock off somebody with a real bushel barrel of stuff?
Absolutely.
You do?
Every once in a while you do. One great thing, like in this local area, in Norfolk County, they have the Norfolk Task Force, and that's comprised of like 15 towns in Norfolk County, and I think they might even be making it a little bit bigger. And it was first started with a grant 27 years ago, and that's what got me into the drug work. 27 years ago, I became a drug detective.
Wow.
They were looking for somebody from each department to join it, and I was asked if I would, and I was off and I was running. And part of the reason that started up, so that started up in probably 1987 or 88 that it started. And part of the reason was because the drugs would be extending out of the neighborhood. So instead of just going to your town line, this way here with the Drug Task Force, we could just extend ourselves and go out further and follow the drug trade. And through working with NORPAC, I've gotten involved in drug cases, but then every once in a while we get into one and you can see that, oh boy, this is growing, and it's getting out of my league. And a lot of it is your local towns, you're limited on what you can spend on your drug, on buying drugs and looking for drugs. And so you'll go to something better avenue, and we've gone to the DEA and gotten the DEA involved. And then they've come in, they've worked with us, and we've been able to follow that chain all the way up the ladder. And for me, that's been great because I made a lot of friends in the DEA, and now I've actually I'm assigned to the DEA, and I work with the DEA. I'm still in with the Norfolk Task Force. So I'm at a great point in my life where I'm doing both of these jobs. But one of the cases I got involved in with the DEA is we followed a oxycodone dealer from up in this area, and we followed him all the way to Florida. And it was one of the great highlights of my career and my life to follow somebody by car all the way to Florida. I was parked under a pine tree, and I watched a drug deal go down in Florida. And I says, Miami Vice? I said, I'm finally here. I never thought that day would come.
This is it.
You know, and
Florida seems to be a key in some of the, Florida seems to be a key in some of the drug problems.
oh, it's
There's
huge. Everything comes up from
Yep,
Florida.
some of these programs I saw one, they got these doctors lined up along this road. They'll write you a prescription. You just walk in, and these guys will go in and get a prescription from this one, and they get one from this. They pay $100 for the prescription. You go in and say, oh, I got a bad back. All right, what do you want here? Then they go right down. He accumulates 500-600 pills, up 95 they go, and here they come.
Yep. They have pharmaceutical clinics. They have pain clinics down there. But they've closed up a lot of them.
Have they?
This is sort of like a little bit of a long story, but they have the pain clinics down there, and a lot of people that live up here in Massachusetts, this shocked me. They can get their, they get down there, and they get down there for a couple months. They live down there. They go to the doctor. They get their pills. Then they're back up here in Massachusetts during the summer months, and every other month they can get the pills sent by mail to them. So they only have to go back to their pain clinic every other month. Wow. And when I was first stumbling across that, you know, I'm saying, oh, great, it's coming in the mail, I got them. And then I'm researching and going, oh, no, that's legal.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. I said, nope, they check in 1 month, they can take a month off, they go back the next month.
You can't fight
and
that.
It's just, but the pain clinics and what the dealers look for are customers. They'll get the script, they'll go fill them, and then they just turn the pills right over.
Sure.
Right
That's
over
what,
to the
that's
dealer.
What these guys were doing.
And when that
right.
first started, that's what they were doing. They were finding people who had the terminal AIDS, terminal cancer, and they were buying the pills from them. They would just buy their scripts from them. But Florida, now getting into my longer part of the story, they've closed down a lot of those pain clinics, have now been shut down. And so now the pills are not out here like they were at one time. When I made my trip to Florida, there were pills everywhere. They were all over the place. You know, we had all kinds of kids selling them. They always could get it from somebody. Now the pills have dried up. They're making things a little bit harder on the doctors prescribing the pain medication, so they're not as available as they used to be. Now we got everybody turning to the heroin because of that. If the pills were out there, and it jacked up the prices once these pain clinics were closed and the pills weren't coming.
Yep. And you see some of these fools, just what you read.
And a lot of what the dealers are doing now, they have presses. They make their own pills.
Oh, they do.
And they'll even be branded with the OC label on them. They'll look exactly like they are. I mean, you can tell if you look, you know, really closely. You can see a little bit of the discoloration. I mean, we don't know it. We buy it, and we will find out when it goes to the lab. A lot of times we've come across a lot of pills and it has fentanyl in it, or it has straight heroin in it. And of course now they're making a bundle of money because they're selling them for $30, $35 a pill, and you think you're getting the oxycodone, and you're not. It's actually the heroin that's pressed.
Okay.
So those presses go for huge money.
You see in the paper, they'll make a bust on 95, maybe the state police, and it's some idiot that's 3 o'clock in the morning, he's doing 110 miles an hour, and he's got 2 kilos of heroin in the trunk. Well, that's not too bright. But if you think if there's that much stuff coming up that they're catching and interdicting, how much are they missing?
Oh, exactly.
That's what I mean. It's got to be, it's like a pipeline going by.
It's incredible what goes up there. I always remember being told, you know, in working drugs, they've always got to go mobile. At one time or another, the drugs are always mobile, and they're out there. And I always use that as an inspiration as a uniformed cop, is you never know what you're going to come across on a vehicle stop. And sometimes as a detective, I've worked certain houses that are drug houses, and you're working on it, and the uniformed cop will end up stopping the guy in a car stop, and he'll end up with a huge score. And you know, you were waiting to get together enough evidence to do a search warrant, and then bing, just like that on a routine car stop.
There was recently a court decision that I think could be disturbing. They caught, I believe it was down here in 95 someplace, a drug shipment. The guy called for a canine, but there was so many minutes between the canine came, and the judge said you had to let him go because the time was too long. It was like 20 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Now I think that's getting nuts.
they ruled it like they just said it's just too much of a time restraint on that, holding that person.
couldn't hold that
And you don't
person.
know where you know, somebody you call and ask for a dog, you don't know where the dog is. Like somebody says, oh, you always call the state, or do you call the jail? You know, no, we just call for whatever dog is closest, because you don't know where they are.
If
They
he
off
has to come
somewhere
from
else.
Taunton, well,
Yep. And
yeah.
sometimes you're lucky. There's a dog right there. Sometimes certain towns, Foxborough has a dog. You know, you can have a dog close by, but a lot of times you don't. A lot of times you have to wait. And like again, with my age, I don't get as angry as I used to about court decisions and judges' decisions as I used to in my younger days, because it becomes like a chess match. It's a game, and a lot of defense lawyers, like a lot of times, they used to think, how can you do that job as a defense attorney? And I remember they had one prominent attorney there during a murder trial that I had, one of my few murder trials that I was ever involved in. And I used to always think, you know, he's a family guy. He had kids just like me, really nice guy, but he just took that attitude of, you know, you do your job, and then I'll make sure that you did your job. You know, you've got your rights. You've got, my client is entitled to a certain, if you did your job right, you're going to win your case. But my job is just to protect everything that he's entitled to and to make sure that you did your job right. And that made sense.
Sure does.
You know, it did. And I looked at it a different way. And it's the same with the courts and the court rulings. You know, they're going to think, well, you know what, if they didn't have, like, they don't have like a time limit, they call it reasonable amount of time. So if you, I mean, just think if they didn't. I mean, you might have a cop out there, might have the car stopped for 2.5 hours before a dog shows up.
Yeah, that's unreasonable.
You know, yeah, it would be very unreasonable.
As far as you
And
know,
I mean, and a lot of times it's not, nothing's done intentionally. It's just the availability of the dog.
The roll of the
But
dice.
you know, the way I look at it is, all right, if there wasn't a dog available, well, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
you don't worry
But
about
the good part about that, you can also say, is the drugs were seized. They're not going to get the drugs back.
Yep. Don't worry about not ranting and raving. Bill and I make up for it on the show.
No, we do our rant.
We do our ranting and
right
raving
here.
here every week.
Fred, this must be a heartbreaking deal for you sometimes when you see a teenager overdose and you got to go tell the parents. And
It is when I see what families go through. It's very,
10.
it's really, really hard watching what a family goes through, because you talked about the addict being a victim, but it affects the families. It's
Yeah,
just,
I
it's
saw this
incredible. Like
firsthand.
a lot of these kids, they're not thieves, and they didn't grow up stealing. They're not going to go break into someone's car or someone's house. So what they end up doing is they end up stealing from their family.
Yep. Oh,
And
yeah.
they take things that
take
don't
everything.
mean much to them, but they're heirlooms to the family.
Yep.
It's something from your father gave you, and now it's missing in the house. And
Yep.
and they end up turning and selling it for like $20 when it's worth, you know, a fortune to the family member.
We moved here. We moved to Brockton first, and we were on the west side over by the high school, and we had really nice neighbors. Oh, they were the nicest people. But the son he had problems, and he destroyed that family. You know, and mom and dad and his sister were so nice. We'd be sitting watching TV, and you see the lights outside. There's the ambulance again, taking him out. You know, he ODing or screaming and yelling and out of control. And that poor mother and father, it beat him down.
You can
Week
see
after
them
week
age.
after to see this kid get in that condition.
And it's that constant, they don't get to sleep, they
No.
don't get, and a lot of these, you know, a lot of these kids, they're having their own children, and then who ends up raising them? It ends up being the parents.
yeah, the grandparents.
And a lot of these kids and the addicts are usually not holding down a job. I've only known a couple heroin addicts that worked full-time on a regular basis. I mean, there's tons of working alcoholics, but there aren't too many working heroin
Now, where did
addicts.
they get the money to feed their habit then?
Well,
That's the
stealing.
problem. You've got to come up with it somewhere.
Stealing.
With girls,
So-
girls, you've got an open end towards sex.
Yep.
You know, they're always going to be
Yep.
able to do it that way. In prostitution, so if you know, you're not going to, not anybody's going to want, but they turn to the prostitution. They'll end up getting into it that way. But the stealing, shoplifting is huge. Usually, all the shoplifters, they're always usually heroin addicts.
We went home for my father's funeral. We got home, somebody broke into our house. I know who did it. The young man next door. He
Yeah.
broke into everybody's house. So I didn't. I just went over to talk to his dad. I says, he's in our house again. He says, I'll take care of it.
Yeah, that,
So usually for, you know, a good bag of heroin, it's usually, I'd say a minimum of $40 habit a day. So you gotta come up with $40 every day.
Yeah.
so that's $300 a week.
You're not working, so
Yeah.
you've gotta come up with it somehow.
Now, the thing is that, you know, you hear the legislators, especially Rosenberg, the new president of the Senate. We've got to get these non-violent addicts out of prison. They're never going to get better. But yet, they're not in prison for being an addict. They're in prison for breaking into houses and stealing things
To support that habit.
to support that habit. And they could be responsible for some poor old lady falling down and breaking her hip and being in a rest home for the rest of her life. Or a guy having a heart attack, or
If you look at all our crimes, it usually always comes back to drugs. Whether it's domestic problems, the house breaking, it all comes back to the drugs. Prostitution, it's just, you know, usually I always talk with everybody when I deal with them to find out what got them on this road and how it does it. A lot of times, you know, girls shoplifting, you know, the mother came in, I talked to the mother, she goes, oh my God, she was in college, she was doing great, she was all straight A's. She went and had her wisdom teeth taken out, they put her on oxycodone, addictive personality, she got hooked.
bingo.
She said now she's off, and now all she does is run around with other heroin addicts.
Woof.
Spend her day shoplifting.
And it's just history repeating itself over and over and over
Yep.
because she never gets put away for it.
Nope, and it's sad to say, it's a lot of times I tell parents, I said, you know, maybe the best thing to have happen to your addicted person is let them get arrested and let them get incarcerated, because then they're off the stuff. And it's their one chance to get clean is by being in jail. And that's tough, that's sad to say.
How many, I know when you get into Boston, you read about it all the time. The guys with the drugs have also got guns. Any of these guys out this way packing guns?
Yes, yes, I've bought drugs with people that have had guns on them before. You know, been arrested with the guns. A lot of times they're doing it because when you think about it, when you're an addict and you don't have any money, one of the best targets is your dealer. Is you try to rip your dealer off.
Yeah.
And they know it. They're dealing. A lot of times these dealers don't know where you live. They don't know all that much about you. And when you get that hot up, that's one of the things you're going to do is you rip your dealer off. You'd be amazed. A lot of the customers, they know so much about their dealer. They've even followed the dealer away. They've tried to follow him to see where they go. A lot of times dealers, before they come into a town, they'll leave stuff on the side of the road somewhere, just so if they do get caught, the only thing they have is what they were bringing to sell. And a lot of times they can just swallow that, or they can hide it good enough that they can get away with it. They don't bring up, but they're also being afraid of being ripped off by their customers. A lot of times the drug dealers will come out and they'll show a weapon to the customer, so the weapon knows, all right, the dealer, all right, he's got a gun, I will never rob him. And that's the last time they've ever carried a gun. Like I've had them say, oh, he's got a gun with him, he's always got a gun with him, and then you get him, he's never had the gun. But he does at one time just to show I've got a weapon.
But you have grabbed him with the gun.
Yes, we have in the past.
Do they go away, Fred? Because so many of the times I've heard conflicting information. Well, they plea bargain it down to some sort of a miscellaneous mischief sort of thing.
Well, they do. A lot of the stuff gets pleaded away. It gets dropped off. You know, it's funny, we were targeting a drug dealer, and the lead detective had given me a call because he said, hey, you did this guy. You know, do you remember him? I said, oh, God, yeah, I remember. I said, he had a gun on him. I said, this is the day we locked him up. He had a permit to carry the gun, but of course now it's a whole different ballgame because you did it while you committed the criminal act of the drug deal, while he had the gun on him. He was charged with that. And then he says, well, geez, it's not, he never went to jail for it. And that was the first time I found out that he hadn't, because I knew he had gone to jail. I knew he went, and I knew he did jail time and everything else, but that was one of the things that just they got part of the plea bargain. They just got rid of the gun charge on him, and that was the first time I knew that. I mean, this had happened like probably 8 years ago, and I just found out now that, well, part of his jail time, the gun was dropped.
When you grab one of these guys and pat him down and you find the gun, that must bring a a new level of excitement to the evening.
Yeah, it does. You know, the name of the game is you don't ever want to get hurt.
That's
and
right.
I mean, majority of the time, these bad guys don't. They're thinking you're going to rob them. They're not thinking of me like, say, if I was the undercover. They're not thinking of me as being a cop. They're thinking of me as being I'm a drug addict, and I'm going to probably try
Well,
to
they can't
rob
tell you're a cop.
So the first time you'd love to tell them, yeah, I'm a cop, I'm a cop. You know, so you're not going to get hurt. Because I don't think they really don't want to hurt a cop.
You ever run into other police, other law enforcement, have to say, back off, I'm a policeman?
Yeah, we've had that where it's pretty good. But you know, we've come up with ways of getting around certain areas. If you're targeting a drug dealer, we've got a national base that you contact, and they'll know if anyone else is targeting. So if somebody else is targeting it, they'll give the lead detective's cell phone number, and you'll get a call and say, hey, I'm working the same guy you are. And then all that database does is notify you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they let you guys work it out. But it has happened. We went to show up on a drug deal, and I went and I bought drugs and drove off from the mall area, and the surveillance team stayed on the dealer, and there's another customer pulling up. And then one of the other detectives goes, hey, there's somebody else watching that person pick up. There was another whole drug task force, and a lot of the guys were from New Hampshire. Their person that they had came down from the New Hampshire area, then hooked up with the other county down here, and those guys were all out there. So it was out of kind of side, Jesus, that would be funny if today was the arrest day. We'd all be leaping out, we'd all.
Fred, we're down to a minute. I want to thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you very much.
If you could say one thing to parents and to kids out there, what would you say?
You know, going back to that light at the tunnel, I think one of the things that we can do as a country is we can control the pharmaceutical drugs. The heroin, the cocaine, everything else coming into this country, like you said, it's amazing how much comes in. That we have trouble controlling.
Yep.
But we can control the pain prescription drugs that are being out there. The other thing we need is we need treatment facilities. We don't have them.
Yeah.
And you won't believe what an addict has to do. I have so many people that I deal with on a personal basis that are addicts that want to get the help.
Yep.
Before they can get in somewhere, they have to be on something. I arrested a kid with heroin. He's a veteran. He's going to get into the VA in Brockton. He says, I'll go in there, I'll get cleaned up tomorrow. I said, great. Well, we can hold all your stuff in court. We can work with you and everything else. He calls me back up. He said, you know, when you locked me up, you took the heroin. So right now I have nothing in my system. I'm going to give them a clean urine, and they won't take me.
Yep.
I have to have something in me.
Good
He said,
Lord.
can you give me a little bit of that heroin back so I'm dirty? And I said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that kid had to say, I'll call you in an hour. He went and got dirty somewhere else, and then I met him and I drove him to the VA.
Wow.
But he had to have a dirty urine to get in.
Wow.
So, and the other problem is you get in, so what you need to do is before any of these places will take you, you've got to go, like say, to Norwood Hospital, and you've got to get admitted. You have to come up dirty.
Yeah.
Then they have to find a bed for
then they
you.
gotta
And then it's like, well, there's a ton of places around. They call for the first place that has an available bed, so you don't know where you're going to end up. And back, like, years ago, before the heroin got to the stage that it's at, when you went in for treatment, you were there for like 28 days.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming
Yes,
in.
thanks.
And all you folks at home, I want to tell you something. I know this guy well. He's a hero of mine. He's out there trying to make this a better world. And I want to thank you. From the
Thank you
bottom
very
of
much.
my heart.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for everybody.
very much saying that.
Thanks for coming in.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, boys.
Okay, that's it.